everyone, it's Mrs. Bebo. In this video, we're going to take a look at solving problems that involve simple interest. With that being said, our learning target for this video is how do I solve problems involving simple interest? With the simple interest types of questions, you're going to have to know some vocab. Principal is the amount of money borrowed or deposited or invested. Interest is the amount paid or earned for the use of the principal. Percents are used to calculate interest, and you can earn interest by investing money or letting a bank use the money you deposit in a bank account. You will pay interest if you borrow money from a bank or use a credit card, and again, not pay in full each month. So there will be different types of simple interest questions where we might be looking at a question where we're actually earning that back if we're investing money or again, depositing that money into a bank account. We also might see questions where we again are borrowing money, which means we're actually paying that interest. So interest can work either way, where it can be a good thing and it can also be a bad thing. Simple interest in this video is again our main focus, and this is calculated using specified periods of time in years. That's important because we'll see questions that'll give us the time in months, and we have to use years in this formula, which I've always called the IPERT formula. That's what helped me to memorize it, but all it is I equals PRT. So down here in this box, you can see our formula. I is the interest, P is the amount of principal, R is the interest rate, which again is a percent, but in our equation, we're going to use it as a decimal, and then time again is in years. So this IPERT, the I equals PRT, that is our simple interest formula that we're going to use for all of the examples that we're going to see throughout this video. So let's go ahead and get started with our first example. So in this one, it says Magdalena put $580 into a savings account. The account pays 2.5% simple interest each year. If she neither adds nor withdraws money from the account, how much interest will she earn after 2 years? So with all of these questions, if it says anything about simple interest, we're going to be using again that I equals PRT formula, right? The interest equals the principal multiplied by the rate multiplied by the time. So now it's just a matter of plugging in the information from this problem into this equation. The amount that we're putting into our savings account, that's your initial investment. That is going to be our value for P. The 2.5%, that is your interest rate. So this is going to be R, but we're going to have to, again, enter this in as a decimal. So to take a percent and to rewrite it as a decimal, remember you can just take your percent and divide it by 100. That's the math behind it, or it's a simple trick of just taking this decimal point and moving it to the left 2 spots. So it'll be 0.025, so 25,000. So that's the value that we're going to put inside of our equation. And then how much interest will she earn after 2 years is what's asked in that question. And so 2 years is our time, and it's already in years, so we don't have to worry about doing any special conversion there. So now that we've identified 3 out of the 4 variables, we're solving again for interest. We just plug in what we just identified. The principal was $580. Again, that was the amount that I initially invested into my account. My interest rate, again, was in percent, but we converted it into a decimal. So now we have 25 thousandths. And then we multiply this by 2. So I is going to equal 580 multiplied by the 25 thousandths multiplied by 2, and we end up finding that we're going to make $29 in interest. And then that's it for that question. The next one we're going to take a look at is going to take this a step further. So in example 2, it says Danielle invests $6,000 in a CD at an annual interest rate of 7%. What will her investment be worth at the end of 18 months? So again, we're solving a simple interest type of question. So we're going to be using our simple interest formula, I equals PRT, or again, I always call it the IPERT for me to be able to memorize it. Identifying each part to this now, we are investing the $6,000 in a CD. So that is actually going to be, again, our investment. So that is your principal. That's your starting value. So we can identify that as what P is going to be. Our interest rate is 7%. Again, this will be our R value, but as a decimal, this is going to be 7 hundredths. All right, so we have identified the principal, we've identified the rate, and then in the question part, it does say, what is her investment going to be worth at the end of 18 months? Well, 18 months, that is our time. However, time in our formula has to be in years. So if we rewrite this, our time, we can do 18 divided by 12 to figure out that this is going to be 1.5 years. So that's the value that we're going to want to use inside of our equation. So plugging in, again, everything that we just identified, interest is going to equal $6,000 multiplied by our rate of 700ths, again, written as a decimal, so 7%, 700ths, multiplied by our time in years, which was 1.5. Multiplying that all together, we end up with an answer of $630. Now, this question is worded differently than the previous example. In the previous example, it just said, how much interest are we going to get? In this case, it says, what will her investment be worth at the end of these 18 months? So the amount of interest that we're earning is going to be added on to that $6,000, and that's going to tell me how much the investment's actually going to be worth. So the final answer is going to be $6,000 plus the amount of interest that we earned. And so our investment is now worth $6,630. So when you see these types of questions, just make sure you're reading it carefully, because there will be times where it'll ask you just for how much interest is being earned, and other times it'll say, well, how much do we now have on our account, or maybe how much do we owe altogether, including the interest. Okay, so in this question, it says, suppose Magdalena opens a savings account for only 6 months. She puts $580 in that account and earns 3.5% each year. How much interest will she earn? And then there's a follow-up question, how much will be in her savings account at the end of the 6 months? So we are looking again at a simple interest question. We're going to identify those different pieces to our formula. So if we write out our formula again, I equals PRT. We're going to need to identify the principal, the rate, and the time. So in the first part, they do tell us the time, 6 months, but again, that is not in years. So time, again, is equal to your months divided by 12, because there's 12 months in a year. And this is going to tell us that this is half a year. The $580 is our initial investment. That is the principal. And then the 3.5% is our rate, but again, we do need to rewrite this as a decimal. So back on example 1, we did say to take a percent and write it as a decimal. You do have to divide that by 100, or a nice trick is that you're just going to move that decimal point to the left 2 spots. And so it'll be 35 thousandths as our decimal that we're going to use in our formula. And now it's just a matter of plugging everything in and multiplying it out. So we're going to take $580 multiplied by the 35 thousandths, and then multiply that by a half. So multiplying that all out, we end up with $10.15. So if the question just asked us how much interest we're going to earn, we'd be done there. But there is a follow-up question. It says, how much is going to be in her savings account at the end of the 6 months? Well, that interest has been added on to that $580 that was initially invested. And so for how much will be in her savings account, we're going to do $580 plus the $10.15 and find out that there is now $590.15 in her savings account. All right, so last example for this video, Mrs. Bebo signed up for the payment plan option when purchasing a new refrigerator. She will pay an extra $345 in interest over a period of 24 months at 3%. How much was the new refrigerator before the payment plan? So this question is worded a little bit differently than the previous examples that we saw. It's actually telling me in the problem how much interest I am paying for this payment plan. And so when I set up my formula, the I equals PRT, we actually know what I is. That's 345. We have 24 months. That's our time. Again, time needs to be rewritten into years. So 24 divided by 12 is going to tell us that, again, that is 2 years. And then our rate is 3%. And this is going to be rewritten as 300ths because, again, when we use the equation, we do need to re-enter that as a decimal. So we're trying to figure out how much the new refrigerator was before the payment plan. So we're trying to find that principal amount, the initial purchase amount. So We don't know what P is. We're multiplying that though by our interest rate and by the amount of time. And so now it just goes back to solving an equation. We need to simplify what's going on the right-hand side by doing the 300ths multiplied by 2. That is going to tell me it is going to be 345 equal to 600ths P. And then now it's just a one-step equation that we need to solve. So P is being multiplied by 600ths. To undo that, we're going to divide both sides by 600ths. And then 345 divided by the 600ths is going to tell me that my refrigerator before this payment plan was $5,750. And that would be my final answer. So hopefully this video helps you with some of those questions that involve simple interest. Make sure you check out the second video if you still need some help with simple interest questions. Thanks for watching.